Ethan had spent years exploring remote islands, searching for places untouched by humans, but nothing had prepared him for the island he now approached. From the small boat he could see thick green forests climbing steep cliffs and strange shapes moving through the mist. The island seemed alive, whispering secrets that no human had heard before. A thrill ran through him. He had come alone as always, carrying only his backpack, a few tools, and a notebook. The silence around him felt both peaceful and strange, as if the island itself was watching. Stepping onto the sandy shore, Ethan felt the soft grains under his boots. He paused, listening to the distant call of unknown birds and the gentle splash of waves against rocks. The air smelled fresh, mixed with salt and the faint scent of flowers he had never smelled before. He knew this island had no record on any map, no history, no signs of humans, but that was exactly why he had come. Curiosity was a human trait that often led him into trouble, yet he had always believed it was worth the risk. He moved slowly through the thick forest, careful not to make too much noise. The trees were massive, their roots twisting over rocks like snakes, and sunlight pierced through the leaves in golden streaks. Strange plants with colorful petals and shimmering leaves surrounded him. It was as if the island had been designed to welcome him, and at the same time warn him. Hours passed and Ethan found no signs of life, other than small creatures that darted in the shadows. He began to wonder if he was truly alone, or if something was hiding from him. As he explored, he noticed a faint trail leading to a cave partially hidden by vines. Something about it drew him closer. It was quiet, yet he felt a strange energy in the air, a pulse that seemed almost like a heartbeat. With a mixture of caution and excitement, he pushed aside the vines and stepped inside. The cave was dim, but he could make out walls that glowed faintly with a soft greenish light. He took out his flashlight, but the light was barely needed. The glow seemed natural, flowing from the walls themselves. He had never seen anything like it. Then he saw her. At first he thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow playing in the corner. But as he moved closer, he realized she was real. A woman, humanoid in shape, sat huddled against the wall. Her skin shimmered slightly in the dim light, and faint patterns moved across her arms like flowing water. Her eyes opened slowly, large and silver, reflecting the glow of the cave. She stared at him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Ethan froze, unsure of what to do. He had never seen an alien, never imagined what it would be like to meet someone from another world. And yet here she was, alone, stranded on this remote island. Ethan lowered his backpack and knelt a few feet away, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. He spoke softly. "Hello, my name is Ethan. I won't hurt you." She tilted her head as if trying to understand. She didn't speak, at least not in any language he knew, but she didn't move away. Slowly, Ethan reached into his bag and pulled out a water bottle, offering it to her. She glanced at it, hesitated, and then, after a long moment, took it. She drank carefully, her movements delicate, almost cautious. Time seemed to slow as they sat there together, separated by fear and curiosity. Ethan noticed that she seemed to observe everything around her. The walls of the cave, the tiny plants growing in cracks, the small insects crawling along the floor. There was intelligence in her eyes, a sharpness that told him she was not helpless, only trapped. And yet, despite the years she must have spent alone, there was a sadness in her gaze, a longing for something far away. Ethan felt a strange mixture of wonder and responsibility. He had found something incredible, something that no human had seen before. But he also knew the challenge ahead would be immense. She was an alien, from a world he could barely imagine, and she had been left behind on this island for reasons unknown. How had she come to be here? Why had no one returned for her? And most importantly, how could he help her now? As the sun began to set, casting orange light across the cave entrance, Ethan made a decision. He would not leave her behind. Whatever it took, he would help her survive and perhaps find a way to return to her world. He reached out slowly, letting her see the gesture was friendly, and whispered, "We'll figure this out. Together." She looked at him for a long time, her silver eyes reflecting trust and a hint of hope. For the first time in years, she moved closer, resting her hand briefly on his. Outside, the island was quiet, but inside that cave, a new connection had begun, between a human and an alien. Two beings from entirely different worlds, brought together by chance, curiosity, and courage. And for Ethan, the adventure had only just begun. Ethan spent the next morning gathering food and fresh water near the cave, while keeping an eye on Lyra. She stayed still, observing him silently, her luminous skin faintly glowing in the early sunlight that filtered through the cave entrance. Despite her quiet presence, there was something about her curiosity that reminded him of a child seeing the world for the first time. He decided to start small, teaching her simple words and actions, showing her that he meant no harm. He pointed to a tree outside and said, "Tree." Then he touched it gently. Lyra watched carefully, her silver eyes reflecting understanding, though she made no sound. Ethan smiled and nodded, repeating the word a few times, speaking slowly. She mimicked the motion, touching the tree, but did not speak the word. Still, she was learning. That small moment filled Ethan with hope. Perhaps language was only a bridge waiting to be crossed, and he could help her rebuild it. Over the next days, they settled into a routine. Ethan would venture out to explore, gather fruit, fish by the shore, or collect firewood, while Lyra observed him quietly, slowly becoming comfortable with his presence. He noticed her fascination with even the simplest tasks, how he sharpened a stick, built a small shelter, or cooked fish over a fire. She would reach out, mimicking the movements, her gestures precise and careful, as if trying to understand every detail. Ethan began teaching her more words: water, food, fire, and gestures to communicate. It was slow, but every day they progressed a little further. Lyra was not just curious. She was clever. Ethan realized quickly that she understood more than she could express. When he dropped something, she picked it up without hesitation. When a small lizard approached, she instinctively held her hand out to guide it away instead of harming it. There was an elegance in her movements and a careful thoughtfulness in everything she did. Ethan was fascinated. He had always known humans were adaptable, but here was someone from another world, learning from him and adapting in ways that felt almost human. One afternoon, while Ethan taught her to use a basic fishing spear, a storm began to form over the ocean. Dark clouds rolled in and the wind began to howl. Lyra paused, her eyes reflecting the approaching storm, and pointed toward the sky with a gesture he didn't understand at first. Then it hit him. She could sense the weather changing before it arrived. The wind picked up, leaves scattered across the ground, and the first drops of rain fell. Ethan felt a mix of awe and respect. This was not a normal human ability. She had skills that could help them survive on this island, skills that were as mysterious as they were valuable. As the storm raged, they took shelter in the cave. Ethan lit a small fire, careful not to let it spread, and they sat together in silence, listening to the wind lash against the rocks outside. Lyra touched the fire lightly, and it flared brightly under her touch, yet it did not burn her. Ethan realized she had some kind of control over energy, small, delicate, but real. She turned to him and smiled, a gentle curve of her lips as if to reassure him that she meant no harm. For the first time, he felt a connection beyond words, a shared understanding that they were both alive in this strange, wild place and that they could help each other. Days turned into weeks, and their bond grew stronger. Ethan taught her not just words but also simple concepts, how to build a shelter that could withstand rain, how to fish and forage safely, and even the idea of friendship. Lyra, in turn, showed him wonders he had never imagined. She could sense which plants were safe to eat, detect hidden water sources, and even heal small cuts or bruises with a gentle touch. Ethan marveled at her abilities, but what impressed him most was her curiosity. She asked questions with gestures and expressions, always seeking to understand, always learning. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan and Lyra sat on a rock overlooking the ocean. The sky was painted with orange and pink, and the waves sparkled like liquid silver. Ethan handed her a small seashell, pointing to it and saying the word slowly. Lyra turned it over in her hands, then touched her chest and made a gesture toward him, her eyes shining. Ethan realized she was trying to say in her own way that she trusted him. He smiled and nodded. They were building something that went beyond words: trust, companionship, and a connection that neither of them had expected to find on a lonely island. For Ethan, life had always been about exploration and discovery, but now, with Lyra by his side, it was also about responsibility, care, and the quiet joy of teaching someone new to see the world. For Lyra, the human was no longer a stranger. He was a guide, a friend, and perhaps the only link to the life she had lost. Together, they were learning from each other, bridging the gap between worlds, and slowly building a bond that was strong enough to survive storms, fear, and the unknown challenges that lay ahead. And as night fell, with stars sparkling above and the waves whispering below. Ethan knew one thing for certain. Finding Lyra was not just an accident. It was the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would change both of their lives forever. Ethan and Lyra had settled into a rhythm on the island, learning from each other and exploring their surroundings. But one morning, Ethan noticed something strange. Small footprints, unlike any animal he had seen before, appeared along the beach. They were precise, almost mechanical, and led from the water to the edge of the forest. His heart raced. Someone, or something, had been here recently, and it was not human. He motioned for Lyra to stay close as he followed the footprints, keeping his senses alert. The forest around them seemed quieter than usual. Birds did not sing, and even the small animals had vanished. The footprints led them to a clearing where broken branches and trampled plants told a story of recent movement. Ethan crouched and examined the marks carefully. They were clearly made by beings that were not familiar with the island, and the precision suggested intelligence. Lyra watched silently, her silver eyes scanning the trees. She touched Ethan's arm lightly and made a gesture, pointing toward the horizon. He understood immediately. She sensed the threat approaching before they could see it. Her ability to feel changes in the environment had always amazed him, but now it was a warning. Ethan knew they needed to be cautious. Whoever was coming, they were not here for a peaceful visit. As they returned to the cave, Ethan quickly reinforced their small shelter and gathered supplies. He felt a mixture of fear and determination. He had faced dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. Lyra seemed aware of the danger as well. She moved with a quiet confidence, her gestures precise, helping him set traps and cover their tracks. It was clear that she had some knowledge of survival that surpassed even his own experience. Together they worked efficiently, preparing for the unknown. That evening, strange lights appeared on the horizon. Ethan's heart pounded as he realized the source was not from the forest or the island itself. A small ship, sleek and metallic, hovered over the coastline. Its design was unlike anything he had seen, smooth and reflective, with shapes that shifted in the fading light. Ethan watched as the ship lowered a small landing pod which touched the beach with a quiet hiss. Figures emerged, tall and slender, their movements precise and deliberate. They wore suits that shimmered in the dim light, and their eyes glowed faintly. Lyra stepped forward, her body tense, and raised a hand in a cautious greeting. The beings paused, then spoke in a language Ethan could not understand. He noticed Lyra's hesitation. She seemed torn between relief and fear. It was clear these were her people, the ones who had left her behind. But their demeanor was cold, formal, and unwelcoming. Ethan realized immediately that they did not trust him, and perhaps saw humans as inferior or dangerous. One of the figures approached him, gesturing for him to move aside. Ethan stood his ground. He had promised Lyra he would not abandon her, and he would not. "She stays," he said firmly, his voice calm but resolute. The alien tilted its head as if assessing him, then spoke again in sharp, commanding tones. Lyra's eyes widened and she stepped closer to Ethan, touching his arm for reassurance. She seemed to understand his determination and, in return, gave him the courage to stand firm. The standoff lasted several tense minutes. Ethan realized that reasoning with them directly might be impossible. He needed a plan, a way to protect Lyra without provoking a conflict that could turn violent. He signaled for Lyra to move back into the cave, and together they disappeared into the shadows. The aliens scanned the area, their glowing eyes searching, but Ethan had anticipated this. They had used the terrain, the forest, and small diversions to hide effectively. The island itself seemed to support them, its dense foliage and rocky cliffs offering protection. For hours they watched as the alien team searched the island. Ethan marveled at Lyra's abilities during this time. She could sense their movements, predict their paths, and warn him before they were detected. It was a combination of human strategy and her alien intuition that kept them safe. By the end of the night, the aliens retreated, at least temporarily, their ship disappearing into the horizon. Ethan and Lyra emerged from their hiding place, exhausted but relieved. The encounter left Ethan with a new understanding. The island was not just a remote place. It had become a stage for a larger story, one that involved worlds beyond his imagination. He realized that helping Lyra would be far more complicated than he had thought. She was not just an alien in need. She was part of a mission that could attract attention from powerful forces. Yet in that moment, as he looked at her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together they had survived the first challenge, and together they would face whatever came next. The night was quiet once more, the ocean waves lapping gently against the shore. Ethan and Lyra sat near the cave entrance sharing a simple meal. Words were few, but their connection was stronger than ever. They had faced their first real threat and survived, not just because of their abilities, but because they trusted each other. And in the silence of the island, a new determination formed in Ethan's mind. No matter what dangers arrived, he would protect Lyra and ensure that her story did not end on this lonely island. The morning after the alien team had retreated, Ethan and Lyra moved quickly through the forest, gathering supplies and planning their next steps. They could not stay in the cave any longer. The aliens might return at any moment, and they needed a strategy to avoid capture. Ethan's mind raced with ideas, each one tested against the island's terrain, the dense trees and the cliffs that surrounded them. He realized that to survive, they would need to combine his human resourcefulness with Lyra's extraordinary abilities. Lyra moved beside him silently, her eyes scanning the surroundings. She gestured toward the tops of the trees and pointed to the rocky cliffs, communicating without words. Ethan understood immediately. She wanted to use the natural landscape to their advantage. They climbed a steep hill, hidden under thick foliage, and found a small plateau overlooking the beach. From there, they could see the path the aliens might take and plan accordingly. Lyra's sensing abilities gave them a further edge. She could feel vibrations in the ground and predict where the team would search first. Ethan and Lyra spent hours crafting simple traps using vines, rocks, and fallen branches. He taught her how to make alarms from twigs that snapped when stepped on, and how to camouflage hiding spots with leaves and moss. Lyra learned quickly, moving with precision and care, but she also added her own ideas, subtle ways of using energy to nudge objects or create small flashes of light to distract their pursuers. Ethan watched in awe, realizing that together, their combined skills made them far more capable than either could be alone. That evening, the aliens returned, scanning the forest with their glowing eyes. They were cautious, moving slowly as if they expected a trap. Ethan and Lyra waited, hidden in the shadows, barely breathing. As the team approached a narrow path, Lyra touched the ground lightly, and a small rock tumbled into view, making a noise that drew their attention. The aliens turned, and Ethan whispered, "Now," signaling her. She released a brief pulse of light from her hand, a harmless but dazzling flash that caused the team to stumble back. Ethan ran along a hidden path, creating diversions and leading them away from Lyra's position. The aliens quickly recovered, but by then, Ethan and Lyra had disappeared into a dense part of the forest. They moved swiftly, climbing rocks and slipping through narrow gaps in the trees, always keeping one step ahead. Lyra's abilities helped them navigate quickly, sensing dangers they could not see and guiding Ethan around obstacles. They reached a hidden waterfall, its roar masking their movements, and used it as a temporary refuge. Ethan marveled at how she could sense every shift in the environment, yet she also trusted him completely, allowing him to take the lead when needed. As night fell, they built a small shelter behind the waterfall, using large rocks and thick foliage for cover. Ethan made a small fire, careful to hide the smoke, and they shared a quiet meal. The tension from the day's chase hung in the air, but both felt a sense of accomplishment. They had survived together, relying on human creativity and courage paired with alien intuition and skill. Ethan realized that the island itself had become an ally, its hidden paths and secret places giving them an advantage that no one else could have used. Over the next few days, they explored the island further, searching for additional safe spots and resources. Ethan taught Lyra more about human survival techniques, and she continued to impress him with her abilities. She could sense when fruit was ripe, detect hidden water streams, and even sense approaching animals before they appeared. Together, they discovered small caves, natural springs, and ledges that could serve as lookout points. Every day they became stronger as a team, combining knowledge from two completely different worlds to survive and thrive. One morning, while scouting near the cliffs, Ethan discovered signs that the alien team had been tracking them more carefully. They were learning too, adapting to the island and following their path more closely. Ethan knew they could not simply hide forever. They needed a plan that would keep them safe long-term, something that relied on both Lyra's abilities and his human ingenuity. He sat beside her on a large rock, pointing to the ocean and then to the island, and began gesturing ideas with his hands. Lyra nodded, understanding immediately. They would need to move quickly, use the island's hidden paths, and be unpredictable. Together, they could outsmart the team. By evening, they had prepared everything for their next move. Traps, diversions, and hidden routes were ready. Ethan felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. He had faced challenges before, but none like this. Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes shining in the dim light, and touched his arm gently. It was a silent promise. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Ethan smiled, feeling a confidence he had never known. He realized that survival was not just about strength or skill. It was about trust, teamwork, and the courage to keep moving forward, no matter the danger. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with orange and purple, Ethan and Lyra prepared to step out into the unknown once more, ready to challenge whatever threats awaited them, and determined to remain free on their island. Sanctuary, Ethan and Lyra moved cautiously through the forest, still alert after their close escape. But as they climbed a steep hill, Lyra suddenly stopped, her silver eyes fixed on something in the distance. She stepped forward, moving with a purpose Ethan had not seen before. Following her, he realized she was leading him toward a hidden cavern, partially covered by vines and moss. The entrance was small and dark, almost invisible, but Lyra seemed drawn to it, as if she knew it held something important. Inside, the cavern walls glowed faintly, not with natural light, but with a subtle energy that pulsed gently. Ethan's heart raced. He had explored many strange places, but this felt different. It was as if the cave itself was alive, resonating with a quiet power. Lyra walked further in, her hand brushing against the walls, and Ethan noticed symbols etched into the stone. They were unfamiliar, intricate, and glowing softly. He realized immediately that this was not just a cave, it was a place of knowledge, a remnant of an advanced civilization. At the center of the cavern, resting on a smooth stone pedestal, was an object unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. It was small, about the size of a human head, shaped like a sphere and covered in shifting patterns of light. As Lyra approached it, the sphere seemed to respond, glowing brighter. She reached out and touched it, and instantly a soft hum filled the cavern. Ethan felt a vibration through the floor, gentle but powerful, as if the object was alive in its own way. Lyra's eyes widened, and she began moving her hands over the sphere, manipulating the patterns of light. Ethan watched in awe as the sphere projected images into the air. Stars, planets, and strange structures floating in three-dimensional space. Symbols and shapes moved in sequences that made no sense to him at first, but Lyra seemed to understand immediately. She gestured toward Ethan, pointing at the sphere and then at herself, trying to communicate that it held answers about her past and her mission. Over the next few hours, Ethan and Lyra explored the sphere together. Ethan realized it was a device for communication and knowledge storage, a kind of universal map and database. It contained information about Lyra's people, their culture, and their mission on Earth. According to the projections, Lyra had been part of a peaceful mission intended to establish contact and cooperation with other worlds. But something had gone wrong, leaving her stranded on the island. The device revealed that misunderstandings among her people had caused her to be left behind, and that now, factions in her civilization considered her presence critical to their plans. Ethan listened carefully, trying to absorb everything. He realized the situation was far more complex than he had imagined. Lyra was not just an alien in need. She was a key figure in a larger galactic story, and her presence on Earth could change the balance of relations between worlds. Yet what impressed him most was her calmness and focus. Despite the weight of her discovery, she had never panicked. Instead, she worked to understand the information, learning quickly how the device functioned and what it revealed. Together, they began to form a plan. Ethan suggested they use the information to prevent conflict and protect the island from future intrusions. Lyra agreed, nodding, and began to teach him how to interact with the sphere. He was amazed at how quickly he could learn, guided by her patience and intelligence. They discovered that the device could project signals across space, allowing them to communicate with distant worlds. This was a powerful tool, and Ethan knew they had to use it wisely. As they studied the sphere, Ethan realized how much humans and aliens could learn from each other. Humans had creativity, intuition, and adaptability, while Lyra's people had advanced technology and deep understanding of the universe. Together, they could solve problems neither could handle alone. He felt a sense of pride in human ingenuity, seeing how his simple actions, Teaching, observing, improvising could complement Lyra's abilities. By nightfall, they had uncovered enough information to understand Lyra's mission and the threats approaching the island. Ethan and Lyra sat near the cave entrance, the glowing sphere between them, watching the stars above. The device had shown them a glimpse of a much larger world, full of challenges but also opportunities. Ethan realized that their survival on the island was not just about hiding. It was about understanding, preparing, and thinking ahead. For the first time, he felt that their situation was not hopeless. They had knowledge, skill, and trust. They had each other. And with that, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. No matter what came next, he would protect Lyra, safeguard the island, and face the dangers ahead with courage and determination. The adventure was far from over, but together they were ready to face it. The morning was quiet, almost deceptively so. Ethan and Lyra had spent the night studying the artifact and preparing their next moves, but the peace of the island was about to end. From a hidden vantage point, Ethan spotted the alien ship returning, larger and more imposing than before. This time it was clear they were serious. The team was equipped with advanced sensors and tools, scanning the forest as they descended. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he did not panic. He looked at Lyra, who was calm yet alert, her silver eyes gleaming with determination. Together they would face the challenge. They moved silently to their carefully prepared positions. Ethan had created traps and diversions while Lyra used her energy abilities to manipulate light and small objects, making shadows move in ways that could mislead the aliens. As the team advanced, Ethan whispered instructions and Lyra nodded, understanding perfectly. It was a delicate dance of timing, skill, and trust. The human's ingenuity combined with her alien powers made them a formidable team, even against advanced opponents. The aliens approached the first trap, a simple alarm made of twigs and vines. As expected, a snap echoed through the forest, causing them to pause. Ethan held his breath as they scanned the area, then signaled Lyra. She focused, and a flash of light erupted from her hand, harmless but disorienting. The alien stumbled back, temporarily confused. Ethan and Lyra used the moment to shift to another hiding spot, moving quietly but swiftly. It was not about confrontation. It was about survival and clever strategy. As the chase continued, Ethan noticed the aliens were adapting, learning from the previous encounters. They split into smaller groups, coordinating with precision. It became clear that the longer this went on, the greater the risk. Ethan realized they could not rely on hiding alone. They would have to stand their ground strategically, using both human creativity and Lyra's unique abilities to defend themselves. He shared this thought with Lyra, and she nodded, her hands glowing faintly with energy as if readying for action. When the first group of aliens reached the plateau near the waterfall, Ethan sprang his traps. Vines snapped, rocks shifted, and small diversions led them into carefully prepared positions. Lyra moved gracefully, her hands emitting bursts of light that temporarily blinded sensors and caused their scanners to fail. Ethan guided her movements, directing her to distract, mislead, and protect. The aliens were precise and intelligent, but Ethan's clever planning and Lyra's abilities created unpredictability they could not anticipate. The confrontation escalated, but violence was minimal. Ethan's goal was to protect, not to harm. Each diversion, each clever misstep, forced the aliens to reconsider their approach. Lyra's energy pulses, combined with Ethan's strategic placements of natural obstacles, allowed them to gain ground and maintain the advantage. It was a display of teamwork, human courage, and the creative problem-solving that had always set humans apart. As the sun began to set, Ethan and Lyra reached the edge of the cliffs overlooking the ocean. The alien team paused, clearly reassessing their strategy. Ethan saw an opportunity. Using the terrain, he created a narrow path lined with obstacles that would slow the aliens and lead them away from the cave. Lyra added a subtle pulse of light to misdirect them further. Step by step, they guided the intruders into a trap that would force them to retreat without causing harm. The plan worked. The aliens, realizing they could not capture Lyra without significant risk, withdrew, their ship ascending quietly into the sky. Ethan and Lyra watched until it disappeared from view, their breathing finally steadying. They had survived not through brute force but through intelligence, preparation, and trust in each other. The experience reinforced something Ethan had long believed. Humans could overcome challenges not because of strength alone, but because of creativity, courage, and the ability to adapt. As night fell, the forest returned to its natural sounds. Ethan and Lyra sat together near the cave, exhausted but triumphant. The danger had been real, but it had also taught them more about each other and about themselves. Lyra touched Ethan's hand gently, a silent gesture of gratitude and connection. Ethan smiled, feeling proud not only of their victory but of the bond they had built. They had faced one of the greatest threats of their lives and had emerged stronger, smarter, and united. For the first time since she had arrived, Lyra allowed herself a small, peaceful smile. She had trusted a human, and that trust had been returned. Ethan realized that their partnership was more than survival. It was hope. They had shown that cooperation between worlds was possible, and that even in the face of advanced technology and unknown threats, determination, intelligence, and friendship could prevail. And with that thought, Ethan and Lyra looked out at the stars above the island, ready for whatever challenges the universe might send next. The morning air was calm, the ocean glimmering under the rising sun. Ethan and Lyra had spent the night planning carefully, knowing that the alien team could return at any moment. But this morning felt different. There was a quiet understanding between them. Through trust, courage, and intelligence, they had survived the first confrontations. Now it was time to take control of the situation, not just hide from it. Lyra approached the glowing artifact they had discovered in the cavern, placing her hands gently on its surface. The sphere pulsed softly in response, projecting images and symbols into the air. Ethan watched as she interpreted the information, her eyes reflecting the shifting lights. He could see that she had discovered a way to communicate with her people without confrontation, to explain her mission and prevent further misunderstandings. It was a delicate task, but one that could bring peace rather than conflict. Ethan realized the importance of what they had in their hands. This device was not only a tool for communication but also a bridge between worlds. Humans had built and learned through creativity, adaptation, and perseverance, and now, together with Lyra, they could prevent a potentially destructive conflict. He felt a surge of pride and determination. Humans may not have advanced technology like Lyra's people, but they had ingenuity, courage, and heart, the qualities that could turn the tide in any challenge. By midday, they had formulated a plan. Using the artifact, Lyra would send a message directly to the leaders of her people, explaining her peaceful mission and the situation on the island. Ethan prepared the surroundings, using rocks and plants to create a natural shield for the cave entrance, ensuring they would not be disturbed while the message was sent. Lyra focused, her hands glowing faintly as the artifact activated. The sphere projected a beam of energy that stretched beyond the island, carrying the truth across the galaxy. Ethan watched silently, sensing the weight of the moment. He had never imagined that his life on a small remote island would involve influencing events on a galactic scale. Yet here he was, side by side with an alien who had become his friend, learning how to combine human intelligence with alien wisdom. The message would take time to reach its recipients, but already Ethan could sense a shift in the energy around the island. The forest felt lighter, the air fresher, as if the island itself approved of their actions. Hours passed, and as the sun began to descend, a small group of Lyra's people returned. But this time there was no hostility. Their movements were careful but respectful, and their glowing eyes reflected understanding rather than suspicion. Lyra stepped forward, her posture calm and confident. The leader of the group gestured, and for the first time, Ethan felt that communication without words was enough. Lyra's presence, combined with the artifact and the clear demonstration of trust and cooperation, had prevented conflict. Ethan stepped forward, and one of the alien figures acknowledged him with a subtle nod. It was a recognition of his role in protecting Lyra, of his courage and intelligence in ensuring her safety. Though they could not speak directly to him in their language, Ethan understood the gesture perfectly. He had acted not out of fear or aggression, but out of respect, loyalty, and humanity, the qualities that had made the difference. As the alien group prepared to leave, Lyra made a choice. She would remain on the island for a while longer, fascinated by humans and eager to learn more about their ways. The leaders understood and respected her decision, promising to maintain communication and to honor the peaceful intent of her mission. Ethan felt a wave of relief and joy. The island would remain their sanctuary, a place where human ingenuity and alien wisdom coexisted. That evening, Ethan and Lyra sat together on a rock overlooking the ocean, the sky painted in orange and pink. They shared a simple meal, their conversation now flowing more naturally. Words were no longer a barrier and gestures were filled with meaning. They reflected on everything that had happened, the danger, the discovery, and the bond they had built. Ethan realized that humanity's strength was not in dominance or power, but in curiosity, courage, and the ability to form connections, even with beings from other worlds. As night fell, stars sparkled across the sky. Ethan and Lyra gazed upward, imagining the vast universe beyond the island. The galaxy was full of unknown challenges, but they knew that together, they could face whatever came next. The artifact, their knowledge, and their bond would guide them. Ethan felt a quiet sense of pride, knowing that humans had played a role in shaping events far beyond their planet. Lyra's presence reminded him that even in the most unexpected circumstances, trust, courage, and intelligence could overcome fear and misunderstanding. And so, on that remote island with the waves whispering below and the stars shining above, Ethan and Lyra looked toward the future. Their journey had begun with discovery and danger, but it had ended with understanding, friendship, and hope. They had proven that humans, though small in the vast universe, could make a difference. And together they were ready for the adventures yet to come, side by side exploring the unknown with courage, curiosity, and unwavering trust.